Ah, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the North American brother of the Japanese Famicom. The NES speaks English, but why can't it learn a little bit of Japanese when in Tokyo? In this video, I'm not only going to make the NES master the Japanese language, but also enhance its ability to display crystal clear 15 kHz RGB video with the NES RGB mod. And this is how I'm gonna build my enhanced Nintendo Entertainment System. The game cartridge for the Japanese Famicom is very compact in size. The same, however, cannot be said for the North American NES. The NES cards are big, even though they contain a similarly sized PCB inside. To do this modification, I took apart the NES and analyzed the insides. I found that the clearance behind the NES cartridge loading tray is very suitable for my Famicom cartridge mod. Taking acute measurement of this area, I started building a PCB which will make the dual cart mod here more simplified and robust in design. I used printed paper cutouts to match and perfect the design before finalizing and sending out the PCB files to China for manufacturing. And yes, it came out really well. I assembled the PCB myself once I had all the parts and then did a fit test. If you are wondering about the small switch in the bottom right corner and what it does, then you will find that information in the video ahead. After the fit test, I put the PCB aside and started working on the NES RGB mod. To do the NES RGB mod, I took out the PCB from the NES chassis and desoldered the CPU and PPU ICs. I then added DIP40 sockets for the PPU and the CPU on the PCB. And the NES RGB fits snugly on top of the board. I then desoldered the rear I/O and power board because I had something much better in mind for the NES RGB. I then installed the dual cartridge mod using wires from an old IDE cable, and it turned out to be pretty well. After a little bit of googling, I found that there existed an open source PCB design for the NES rear I/O that you can use with the NES RGB. This design was built by Body4938 and I modified it to support the PlayStation 3 rear multi-AV socket so that I can use a PlayStation RGB cable with it. This PCB also has a PIC microcontroller which allows users to change the color palette and reset the machine with key press combination from the controller. The boards were delivered to me partially assembled. I bought some gold-plated RCA jacks and used some parts from the old NES to complete the PCB. Then I had to program the PIC microcontroller using the PIC 3 so that I can use it to reset the machine and change the color palettes of the NES RGB using the NES controller. I also had to file away the rear part of the chassis to make space for the multi-AV output. I used high quality shielded wires for audio and video connections and assembled all the PCBs together. I also added the expansion audio mod so that the NES can deliver the extra audio channels from certain Famicom cartridges. I did a small test run to find that the audio and video output from the system was exceptionally perfect. As you can see, I installed white LED lights which can be controlled via the micro switch. These lights make the transparent cartridges glow in the dark. It also gives a nice look to the system. I also installed a multicolor power LED on the front which could change colors to indicate what palette is actually on. So it will go from red to blue to purple to let you know which palette is currently being loaded and is being used to show the colors on the screen. I also 3D printed the cartridge door flaps and installed them directly onto the shell by using screws and springs. I did a test and found that the N8 EverDrive also plays perfectly fine with the system and also outputs very nice expansion audio. Now let's do a recap of all the mods that have been installed on this NES system. And now, there was just one last thing that I needed to do. I replaced the old stickers with new high quality vinyl stickers, and it looked fresh out of the box. And so, my Japanese speaking Nintendo-san was finally complete.